Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to another episode of 4E Fridays. Today I want to talk about skill challenges. This is one of the more universally kind of panned aspects of the D&D 4th edition game. And I've got to say, I'm not entirely in disagreement with them when it comes to the way that skill challenges were implemented. I actually really like the idea of using skill challenges because it sort of allows for more cerebral sort of approaches to different aspects of the D&D game. One of the examples they give here is, for example, an audience with the Duke. The issues that I kind of have with skill challenges are, number one, the amount of successes that you need to gain in order to successfully complete a skill challenge starts to get pretty high. And generally speaking, the game doesn't particularly like for you to keep using just the one single skill over and over and over again. It kind of wants other skills to be used throughout, throughout the challenge, right? If, for example, if all you need to do is make diplomacy rolls and just keep making diplomacy over and over and over again, and you've got a player that has, that's trained in it and they've got a high charisma, so they have a very good chance of being able to make these rolls all the time, it kind of trivializes the idea of the roll. But when you get into a skill challenge and you let the players know that's what's happening, they're automatically going to try to get their best skills to be used for the situation, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to be able to do it. And again, you don't want to have a situation where you can just have one player do all of the skills. For example, here for negotiations, they give the primary skills as bluff, diplomacy, insight. So like different skills that are done there. And then there's other skills that are used like history, intimidate, and things of that nature. And those all are sort of, logical. They sort of make sense. But again, the idea is that, you don't just keep running the same skill over and over and over again. And I agree with that concept. I definitely wouldn't want to do that either. So the way that I would approach skill challenges is, for the most part, I would use a system kind of similar to the death saves sort of concept. Instead of needing 12 successes before getting 6 failures on something that's really complex, I wouldn't mind going with the 3 versus 3, but maybe having the skilled or the DCs be higher or lower depending on which skills you're kind of using. Again, needing 12 successes, to let the players know it's okay, this is a skill challenge with complexity level 5, so you need 12 successes before you get 6 failures and go kind of thing. It just takes a lot away from the game. It sort of destroys the immersion, I guess, or the suspension of disbelief kind of thing, and it has the players thinking about things a little bit differently. So, going back to the example of an audience with the Duke, when I would go to run a skill challenge, what I do is I have the skill challenge be done kind of in the background. I never let the players know specifically that this is a skill challenge, but I'll present them with a situation where combat's clearly not going to be the best solution. So, for example, with the Duke, and I could go beyond the 3 and 3 depending on the situation, depending on the player's skill selection, because I want to be able to have each of the players kind of participate, type of thing. So let's just say I were to use a higher number of successes before a certain number of failures. So the first thing, the players come into town and they locate where the Duke is. They go to his manor, whatever it is, like his offices or wherever he would be for the players to get an audience with, only to be turned away. The Duke is a very busy man. He doesn't have time to speak with every, would-be adventurer that comes into town, type of thing. So the players need to speak with this Duke. They need to secure his aid in some sort of task. But they're turned away. So the first thing they might think to do is to talk to some of the Duke's servants or aides or, counsel. And, so that might require doing I got to look at the skill list actually in 4th, because I'm running so many different versions of RPGs. I've got so many different skill names stuck in my brain. So here's the skill list here for 4th edition D&D. So let's just say that the first thing that they do is they make a simple diplomacy check for one of the Duke's servants. And the servant says that it's the Duke is very busy and basically doesn't really enjoy talking to adventurers, but if the players can put themselves in the good graces of the Duke, or to do things to make his life easier, maybe there's some problems going on in the town or village or settlement or wherever you are, that if the players can sort of deal with some of those and put some of those fires out, then they've proven themselves to be useful directly to the Duke, and they may be able to gain an audience that way. So that could be one success for the skill challenge. So let's just say I would go with 4 successes type of situation. So the players can then go back into the town itself, and they can do maybe an insight check on some of the individuals that might be having some problems. You could do streetwise to get sort of an idea of what some of the issues might be, or what some of the people may be that you want to talk to gain that information. You could always do something like intimidate if somebody's being particularly difficult with you or stubborn. If an individual, maybe if the Duke is trying to deal with the fact that somebody stole his child's favorite toy or something like that, then you could have the players do like a stealth and then thievery check to sort of sneak up on whoever has it or distract them, and then steal the object and take it back and give it back to the Duke. You could do again like history checks. You could do perception, religion, but you just sort of come up with different ideas for ways to sort of help out with certain situations. So you run the skill challenge in that sort of manner. So they have to gather information, which might be diplomacy checks, it might be streetwise checks. They may have to do other things involving maybe the priest is being difficult in town, or there's something sort of going on with that. So you could have a character use religion to sort of go over the religious rites that the Duke may want the priest to use, or to undergo, or to give to somebody else, but the priest is hesitant, or they say that's not part of their order, or things along those lines. So I would run again the skill challenge without overly expressing the fact that it's a skill challenge, and allow it to go over a lengthy period of time. It doesn't necessarily need to all be done in a single day. One of the things that the players may find out is that the Duke is concerned because a band of orcs have sort of taken up residence fairly close to town, and they've been harassing supply caravans and merchants and pilgrims and travelers. So if those orcs are taken out, that might be one step. So you can use that, and then you can have like a nature check to sort of follow the orcs' tracks, or to locate their camp, and then that's another skill check that could be used towards it. So I like to think of it more in terms like that. Another one that I could look at is a ship in a storm trying to navigate the waters. Again, you could have things like endurance checks to hold on to like a mast as the ship is being tossed violently about. Maybe one of the sails, like a line, breaks, and they need to sort of resecure the sail, so they may have to make an athletics check to climb up, and then may have to make like an endurance check to hold on. Another thing might be they're concerned about the waters that they're in, so an individual could again use either nature or history to know about like maybe notable shipwrecks on like near the shore of this location. You could have again like nature be used to help navigate. Use all these different things that you could do. You could have the crew be scared, so you could use intimidate or diplomacy, or even bluff, to try to get them to shake their fears and face the storm head on kind of thing. Another example of a skill challenge that's been utilized a little bit more successfully in modern days is the concept of chases. So you are trying to chase down an individual, and instead of the skill challenge just being like the players deciding what skills to use while they're chasing this person down, you have an obstacle that you throw at the player characters that may require them to think about what skills they could use. Like, for example, a fruit cart gets turned over, right? So you've got all of these like round melons or apples or things like that the players could step on and slip on. So they may have to make like an acrobatics check to keep their balance, or they may have to make an athletics check to jump over it. They could make an intimidate check to get to prevent or to get like the person that owned the cart to try to clear as much stuff out of their way as possible before the characters make their way. So chases again can be another example of a skill challenge that can be done in a way that it's not immediately obvious. So I like the idea of running them kind of in the background or presenting a scenario where again like combat's not going to be the solution, but not just say, okay, well, you're in a skill challenge now, so go type of situation. That's the way that I would run them. That's the way I think they kind of work best. But again, I would also look at reducing the number of successes here, because again, this is it could be a little bit much. I would rather the DCs be higher for more complex things, or to have like a skill that doesn't necessarily spring to mind for the situation that they're facing, but if the players can explain why they would use that particular skill, then like again, with the Duke situation, maybe there is a religious holiday where the idea is that the leadership of this area is supposed to make themselves open to any and all that would require aid. So you could use that as a way of doing things, even though it's not a normal skill that you would think of. That might be a solution, right? So instead of it being the situation where, well, it doesn't really make sense, so don't do it, just have it be a higher DC. But again, I like to keep things sort of in the background, and I think it works better that way. So you can't start a skill challenge until the player characters know their role in it, right? And that's something that, again, I feel like it just kind of it changes the way the players would approach the situation, I think. So I think you can explain the situation, you can sort of set the stage, and the players will know that they're going to have to be clever. And if they come up with good ideas that really make a whole lot of sense, maybe don't even require a skill roll, like under the rewarding clever ideas. Simply, if they come up with this really clever idea of a way to, help their situation, maybe just have it count as a success instead of it being like, okay, well, now make your roll, and then they come up with this really clever idea, but then they roll garbage and they fail it, right? So there's just different approaches to that I would, consider doing. I haven't really run a lot of skill challenges in my limited time with 4th edition D&D. Again, you got like the Urban Chase. You have some ideas here that definitely are really great ways to start. But again, I would suggest running these in a way that like you don't just tell the players that they're in a skill challenge, because it changes the way they'll approach things. Just present them with the situation and let them go, because the players will come up with clever ideas anyway. They're going to want to succeed at what they're trying to do, and they will think of sort of unorthodox or off the wall strategies to accomplish those, and I think that's perfectly fine. But again, I just don't like the idea of I like the concept of a skill challenge, and I like the idea that it's a way of introducing the skills and making them very vital to the game for things more than just like perception to avoid being ambushed, or arcana to identify a spell effect or things along those lines. So I really like the fact that they really wanted to incorporate skills as a vital part of the game, but I think they just were a little too heavy-handed with the way that it was done. And for me, again, like if I were in a situation where it's like, okay, well, this is a skill challenge now, it's not going to be as interesting or something that I care as much about as just being given a problem and being left to my own devices to try to solve it, right, type of situation. So again, I would look at the complexity and sort of change the way that I approach that, because getting like 6 successes, that might be it just, rather than again repeating skills over and over again, just let them come up with a few great ideas, and at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, that's probably good enough. Or if they come up with enough bad ideas, well, then they have to figure out some other approach type of situation. So, anyway, those are just sort of my thoughts on skill challenges and the way that I would try to implement them into my 4th edition game. Again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below about the skill challenges. Did I hopefully present the information well enough for you guys to be able to follow? Yeah, I mean, this is something I would definitely want to revisit at some point when I actually have a chance to run 4th edition D&D again. My plan is to run 4th edition after I wrap up my Savage Tide campaign. And I will be trying to incorporate some skill challenges in there in the manner that I would prefer to, and when that happens, I'll sort of let you know how that goes. But for the time being, I hope this made sense. I haven't gotten a lot of sleep because of the heat and humidity and allergies and all that stuff, so I hope I was clear enough in this video. But anyway, like I said, let me know what your thoughts are on the concept of skill challenges and how you would implement them in your game to make them feel a little bit more seamless and a little less gamey, I guess would be the term for it, maybe, or gamified. So thank you all so very much for your time. I appreciate it, and we will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.